Hi everyone, thanks for watching Retro Tech. Today we're still working on that 1354Q that you might have seen in the last episode where I repainted that shell and did some other pre-work. Well, today we're actually going to finish that up. We're only a couple weeks away from the Nashville Gaming and Pinball Convention, and I really need these two PVMs ready to go for the convention and our booth set up next month. So without wasting any more time, let's just go ahead and get right into the back of this monitor. Now it's time to get started on the real work. We're going to have to disassemble this monitor, and we're going to replace the capacitors in both the deflection board as well as the neck board. The capacitors have come in the mail, and I'll show you how I've got them spread out right now. Got the capacitors lined out here by their size and voltage, and then set for me to come over and easily grab when I need one. Back here at the rear of the monitor, I'm going to just go ahead and discharge it, and I'm going to hook my discharge cable here just to this frame, the wire, make sure it's nice and tight in there. Since that's all part of this big ground loop, that should be good. And look, I'm not going to use the gloves this time, just to show you, honestly, it's not that hazardous. This thing's probably already discharged. These PVMs, especially the ones that are made later, tend to self-discharge, but just to be safe, I'm still going to always do this. But yeah, see, I'm clicking that metal, and there's no sound really ever on the PVMs. I've had it on consumer sets, but none of these. So now that that's done, I'll take the rest of the monitor apart. First thing you're going to take out is this neck board. And there are 3 connectors on here. I'm just going to try to gently pull straight back. Like that. Let's just go ahead and again pull this open. And you can see right there's our spot. We're going to just pull that. Out like that, and if it goes far, it's okay. Put it back like that, and there's your anode cap. So the rest of this assembly here just involves taking apart all your plugs and basically pulling boards. And just remember again where you can disconnect your cables from and where they're going to. Mark them if you need to, and then you'll be ready to put it back together pretty simply. But let's go ahead and do all that and pull these boards. Now that all the cables are done, we'll just slide this board out nicely. Make sure we get every connector. Now we have our deflection board. And we'll remove these 4 screws on the board, and then we'll pull this away from this plastic protection shell and get started replacing the capacitors. While this monitor is disassembled, this is a great time to get in here and clean around some of these fragile areas. Especially around this yoke assembly, there's just tons of built up crud and dust. Yuck. Look at these cables here. This is actually red under all that soot. So it's a really good time, and it's a safe time to get in there and clean. So we're going to do that with a lot of compressed air, maybe some brushes, and a little bit of alcohol, isopropyl, and we'll get in here and clean all this up and get it looking really nice. Let's see if I can't show you this. It's not always perfect, but generally if you just tap it and suck, you can see how the solder comes out, and now that pin's broken free. Both of them are free. So you just wiggle it from underneath, and even if they're touching the pads, it's still a good job does a good job breaking that solder free. I've got some extra solder here in one of these holes, so I thought I'd show you how you just put this thing on here, heat it up, and it cleans those holes up perfectly. Here's the neck board, and I'm just going to show you me inserting one of the last capacitors on here. There's only 2 on this board, and remember the negative is going to be marked with the white on your capacitor, and then there's going to be a white dot there on the spot to line it up with. One last spot here on the capacitor. Let's hit it with a little flux. We'll come right in here. I'm trying to get this last spot done right here. Just add a little flux on there. And the flux just makes everything bond so much nicer and flow easily. And all the capacitors have been replaced. Let's go take a look at the deflection board. Okay, so the PVM's been fully reassembled except for the one spot here, the anode cap. Has to be reinserted into the tube. Now, just so you know, energy can still rebuild or build up inside this tube with no electricity. This is what's most dangerous on a CRT. Not right now really too much, but while it's running. See, electricity comes through this, your high voltage part, anode, goes into here and just builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up electricity, and that's why there's so much power inside here that can hurt you if you were to touch that cap area, that line of electricity while it was running or while there was electricity stored in it. So I will be doing a future video a little bit more detailed about safety, but this is just one of the most important areas to be mindful of if you're ever even looking at a CRT. This is the area to be worried about or cautious, most cautious of, is this whole flyback anode cap to tube. Now for the big moment. After you do everything, it's just power testing, and I'm not concerned with putting anything in. I'm just going to power it on and test it that way first, because this one has an on-screen menu. And here we go. It's always nice to see everything operate normally. I don't see any, hear anything bad, or nothing's barking or anything. And there we go. So the degauss is going down. You'll see no sync, menu, and well, it looks to be great. So appears to be finished. Let's go ahead and get a signal going to this thing and see how it looks. I've got the Super Nintendo plugged in through an RGB SCART input adapter, and I'm going to go ahead and see how that looks on the screen. And we'll turn down the screen brightness a little bit so it doesn't show so bright on the camera. But you can see here, as to be expected, there's a big black line here, and it still looks relatively straight. Everything else looks really sharp, which is great. And so colors look very vibrant on here, but now it needs to be calibrated. So we'll go ahead and get started on that calibration. I'm looking behind the PVM at the deflection board while I'm working on some calibration, and I wanted to note some things that are important. There are a few things inside this PVM, and most 14-inch PVMs like this, that you can adjust manually. You see that potentiometer right there behind this cable? That potentiometer right there will do a horizontal shift on your monitor. You can manually adjust that. Then we're going to scroll up here to the neck board, and first notice this white potentiometer right here. That controls our overall screen convergence. So if your lines, your vertical lines, are not completely white, if you see red, green, or blue bleeding through on the screen, on all over the screen, that's the one to adjust clockwise or counterclockwise. And then there's two more potentiometers behind here next to that you can actually access those to the back of the neck board. So let's go there. On the back of the neck board, you'll notice these small places next to that. H-stat is what they call it, but it's really the convergence. You've got a focus and a screen. So this screen potentiometer right there, you can stick a tiny screwdriver in there and turn it, and that controls your overall screen brightness. That goes straight into the back of the flyback. Other models will have these two adjustments on the flyback, but on this PVM you've actually got it on the back here. And then focus is your overall screen focus, and if you have a blurry picture at all, always come back and check your focus. Usually it's probably just needs a little bit of adjustment to get it tightened back up and nice and sharp. Okay, so I've calibrated this thing for geometry, and I just wanted to show you the screens, the way it looks after. I like this screen because it shows the colors, as well as you can press A again and see a nice grid. So again, I've just slightly overscanned my lines, centered up my picture perfectly, gotten my focus really tight, as well as my convergence. Pretty standard calibration, same thing with the service menu. Everything else was done in the service menu besides what I highlighted earlier. So that's pretty much it for this. Let's go look here at linearity. See how the circles are nice and circle. Now look, this is a good tip to know if your calibration, if you just need a calibration or if you need a capacitor job. If you go to this linearity screen and things look oval shaped, and when you adjust your linearity, if it's not really helping any, it's just still staying ovals, that's what was wrong with this one. And so that means your capacitors need replacing. Same thing on another screen. If you're trying to adjust something and you're just getting a little wonkiness, or it just doesn't look right all to begin with, that's a geometry capacitor that's probably gone bad. Well, there's really not too much more to do on this monitor, but what I do always like to do before I go ahead and close it up, I'm just going to leave it sitting here for a while, let it run, make sure there's nothing wrong with it, make sure it's working properly. I'll leave a couple games going, and I'll come back in a few hours probably and just see how it looks. It looks great right now, but I want to see how it looks a couple hours from now, and I'll also test all the other inputs to make sure they're functioning properly, and then we'll get it the bezel nice and clean, and the buttons and the screen, and then we'll reassemble, and this thing will be ready to go. Okay, let's take one final look at the new finished 1354Q. Just looks fantastic. The paint came out wonderfully. The color scheme, the monitor is calibrated perfectly, and hopefully we'll get some time to set up a test demo between this one and the last one we did, this 1353. It's actually an Olympus 1353 basically, but same monitor almost. Hopefully we can get them set up in tandem, and we'll do a little demo with them. But they will be at the show next month, and that's about it. So again, I appreciate you checking out the videos and liking and sharing and subscribing. Please let me know if you have any comments or questions, and have a wonderful day.